Chapter 325. Go to Hell. Lu Nian was suddenly aware of something behind him when he felt a cold breath with a beastly presence. A demon beast? Impossible. His petrify would turn everything nearby into statues. No demon beast would be able to get close to him. Seeing the weird grin on Zhang Kong's face, Lu Nian finally had no choice but to turn his head around. Within a blink, a face rapidly approached him with the speed of the wind, leaving him dumbfounded. Who's this? Why would the face be covered in crimson lines full of dark energy? The flicker from its eyes was utterly intimidating. Mo Fan? Lu Nian stared at the person in front of him in disbelief. It's me. Mo Fan wore a savage grin, to an extent that it revealed the cruelty in his bones. His voice was completely different than before, although his words sounded extremely familiar to him. I did say that the next time you saw me, I'd send a mongrel like you to hell. Mo Fan was unable to think clearly in his demonized state. However, the hatred he bore before turning into a demon was inerasable. The rage in his heart finally found a way out, that being to crush this disgusting, loathsome devil commander, soul and all, into pieces. Lu Nian was still lost in his thoughts. He could not actually tell if the person was still Mo Fan himself, or a total demon. He had seen many test subjects in person, and none of them were able to speak like a human after the transformation, as they had completely turned into monsters. They could not even retain their human appearance. On the other hand, apart from the bloody lines and the long white hair, Mo Fan had managed to keep his usual appearance. If he had yet to demonize completely, why would he have such a horrendous, deadly aura? Why would he have such eerie power? I can't let you die too quick. Why don't you give me a kowtow first? Mo Fan grinned and revealed his sharp fangs. As he finished the sentence, he grabbed the back of Lu Nian's head. To you? Do you think you can still move standing so close to me? Ah! Lu Nian was hurled to the ground by Mo Fan with brute force before he could even finish his sentence. Lu Nian slammed on the ground with his face down. He did not have the time to defend himself. He was thrown to the ground like a dog with a great blow to his head. The ground used to be muddy, but it had turned solid as a rock from Lu Nian's petrify. Lu Nian was planning to use his power to turn his opponent into a dead statue, but he ended up testing the sturdiness of the rock with his own face. The rock shattered into a pile of dust. Lu Nian's head sank into the ground below like an ostrich, leaving him in incredible pain. As Lu Nian was an advanced magician, his flesh was significantly stronger than that of an ordinary human. If he were some servant-class demon beast, his head would have burst open, just like a watermelon dropped from a great height. On the other hand, his face was only slightly sunken, with blood smeared across it. I will never forgive you. Lu Nian's body quickly unleashed a golden glow, turning into a flexible armor wrapping around him. The armor was rather advanced, even providing protection to his head. As Mo Fan threw a punch right at his face, the golden armor had already covered it up. Mo Fan was not too bothered by the sudden appearing armor. He held Lu Nian up and clenched his right hand into a flaming fist. The fist that burned like a meteor was thrown right at Lu Nian's face. He did not even care about the protection of the golden armor. There was a fiery explosion as the punch landed on Lu Nian's face. The armor managed to resist most of the damage from the fire, preventing his skull from burning into ashes instantly. However, the impact from the punch still knocked out all his teeth and broke his nose. The golden armor shattered as it could not withhold the violent fist, revealing Lu Nian's distorted face, covered in blood. Petrify. Lu Nian was indeed an advanced magician. He still managed to cast an advanced magic despite the injury he was suffering from. His magic, strengthened by the bracer he wore, burst out from Lu Nian's eyes in the direction he was looking. A gray-white energy spread rapidly in that direction. Lu Nian was extremely furious. All he could think of was to turn the kid into a rock and smash him into pieces with a kick. The demonized Mo Fan totally ignored the approaching threat. As he dashed toward Lu Nian, the gray-white substance covered his legs and rooted him to the rock under his feet. Mo Fan smashed his fist at the ground, which instantly burst out with a flame pillar that devoured the petrifying energy crawling up his legs. The gray-white substance had just spread across the area within 100 meters of Mo Fan when the flames surging up from the ground cracked them open. The two forces collided with one another, the area petrifying and cracking open in an endless loop. It felt like a rose-red army and a gray-white army were having a standoff with one another. Commander Lu Nian's eyes widened. The energy had originated from his eyes. His trembling body clearly indicated the strain he was enduring. His energy was usually strong enough to petrify the body of a commander-level demon beast. How could Mo Fan possibly stand a chance against it? Since Mo Fan had turned into a demon, why was it that he could still retain his thoughts, and still remember to get his revenge? You piece of scum, you should be thankful to me, as I gave you such power. Lu Nian blurted out resentfully. Mo Fan had demonized on his own, thus Lu Nian did not even have the chance to place him under his control. Furthermore, Lu Nian had never thought Mo Fan would be able to demonize so perfectly, even retaining his human appearance. He was able to speak and retain memories of the past while also being granted overwhelming strength. If this kid had such terrifying strength after demonizing while he was only an intermediate magician, if he could survive the after effects and further improve his cultivation, he could easily become a demon that would shock the entire world. He could easily trample the supreme magicians, the commander-level demon beasts, even the ruler-level demon beasts under his feet. I should thank you, indeed. The demonized Mo Fan displayed his anger and savagery as he laughed grimly and exposed his sharp fangs. Which is why I'm sending you to hell now. Chapter 326, Tearing Lu Nian Apart. Violent lightning arcs revolved around Mo Fan. The writhing, purple-black energy swiftly formed a long spear made of countless lightning arcs in front of him. Mo Fan grabbed the lightning spear and drove forward with a burst of speed, as if he had merged with the lightning itself. The spear thrust right at Lu Nian's chest. The lightning had already displayed its overwhelming penetrating force when it punctured an advanced-level tyrant lizard's brain. The purple lightning twisted in the air. The tip of the lightning spear made contact with Lu Nian's chest. Lu Nian could feel the force of the lightning lunging at him. The lightning did not have any paralyzing effect. It was purely destructive, and there was no need to mention how overwhelming it would be when so many lightning arcs were gathered together into a thick spear. His golden armor was the first thing to meet the lightning spear. The advanced armor had no chance against the penetrating power. The spear instantly burned a black hole through it, piercing through the armor and striking Lu Nian's chest, producing a wild, ear-piercing screech. The lightning arcs did slow down by a very small margin as they touched Lu Nian's skin, rib cage, and back, before punching through with brute force. The lightning tore his back open, leaving a huge bloody hole. The lightning spear was stuck into his chest, and its tendrils continued to crackle in the air. Lu Nian's body stiffened, his eyes widened. He tried to touch the hole in his chest, but his hand was instantly scorched black by the lightning. He could not feel any pain from his hand, as his life force was draining away at a lethal pace. Pain was not the scariest thing to humans. It was the moment when they could no longer feel pain, indicating that death was knocking on their door. How could you? Lu Nian stared at Mo Fan with a contorted expression. The demonized Mo Fan was standing right in front of him, lightning flickering wildly around him. He was like a god of lightning who had just descended to the mundane world. Mo Fan grinned sinisterly before bursting into great laughter. His wild laughter and Lu Nian's distorted face formed a great contrast. Perhaps Lu Nian, who had just slaughtered innocent lives a short time ago, never thought he would fall into this kid's hands. Such an outstanding force should be under his control instead. Why would he treat him as his first target, instead? The demon element. He had tried so hard just to find a suitable candidate for the experiment, but he had accidentally made someone who ended up as his nightmare, who just impaled him with lightning. Not a single drop of blood was visible. The scorched hole on his chest resulted in an extremely shocking view as his body slowly fell backward. In the final moment of his life, he realized just how beautiful the sky was, like a giant blue gem. However, he could see a face in the sky, a sinister-looking one covered in crimson lines. It belonged to a young man, the perfect test subject of the new element. He just couldn't accept it. He was so close to having the perfect demon under his control, which he could abuse to finally do anything he desired. Oh! As his life approached its final moment, the claws of countless shadow wolves lunged at his nearly dead body. Lu Nian initially thought his life would simply end soon, but he still suffered unimaginable pain at the final second. The pain was inflicted right on his soul, after leaving its physical container. The claws were able to attack his soul directly. Mo Fan had done it on purpose, using the claws to tear his soul into pieces, not giving the commander a chance to turn into a deceased spirit. The soul of a human was utterly fragile. It would vanish from the world after receiving any direct attack, as if the soul were repeating its death countless times over. The reason why hell was so terrifying was because it was said to be torturing the souls of those who were dead. Lu Nian did not even have time to show remorse as he was torn into pieces by Mo Fan's shadow claws. Mo Fan did not even allow the pieces to drift away with the wind. They were absorbed into a strange river. It seemed like the underworld river, with countless souls of demon beasts lingering on its surface. They were utterly terrifying to Lu Nian's fragmented soul. Was this actually hell? Did he really end up in hell? The pendant let out a soft buzz. Mo Fan could even hear Lu Nian's scream of agony from inside it. Either way, the souls being drawn into the little loach pendant would eventually be refined. It was impossible to tell if the pain from being refined was comparable to the inhumane experiments. At least, it definitely would not feel good, as anything related to the soul element was tightly related to pain, torture, and death. After killing Lu Nian with his own hands, Mo Fan suddenly felt his mind going blank, as if he had lost his purpose. Zhang Kong looked at him from a safe distance away, not daring to get any closer. From what Zhang Kong knew, the strength that the demonized Mo Fan had displayed was still not his full potential. He wanted to help Mo Fan recover from his current state, but he was clueless about how to approach him. Not many test subjects were able to survive this long after the transformation. Zhang Kong was not involved in the inhumane experiment either, so he had no idea what to do. He decided to try communicating with Mo Fan, since he appeared to still have a slight hint of his own personality compared to those who had demonized in the past. Mo Fan, Zhang Kong fixed his eyes on Mo Fan. The demonized Mo Fan turned his head around. His eyes were filled with rage that was on the verge of bursting out. He did not attack Zhang Kong straight away, as he could still barely recognize the chief military instructor from Bo City. However, a tearing pain spread across his brain, so intense that he felt like tearing his head in half with his bare hands. It was an overwhelming and wild spiritual impact, most likely the after effects of using the blood sarira. It was strong enough to drive a person crazy, and even thoroughly shatter a person's soul. Mo Fan let out a beastly scream. His fire element and lightning element spread out wildly into his surroundings after he lost control over them. Listen to me, Mo Fan," Zhang Kong blurted out when he saw Mo Fan trying to resist the spiritual breakdown. The demon element has never been considered a real magic element due to its insane after effects. It is the same as overdrawing the hidden potential of a human soul in exchange for a temporary burst of extraordinary power. However, it's possible that your soul will be shattered during the process. Tell me, what I should do. Mo Fan, who had managed to retain his final hint of rational thinking, responded to him. Chapter 327 Soul Breakdown. Soul Essence, you need a large amount of it, Zhang Kong said to Mo Fan. You should try your best to control the power, so I can bring you back to the military. They have enough soul essence to prevent your soul from breaking down due to the after effects. The demon element is indeed a demon. It's like signing a contract with a demon, which can grant you its power, before coming back to claim your soul. Although Mo Fan possessed 4 elements, the more power he used, the stronger the after effects he would have to bear. The only way to protect his soul was by using a large amount of soul essence. Soul essence was useful in strengthening a magician's soul. If the demon that had granted Mo Fan the power was drawing his soul away, he could neutralize it by using a sufficient amount of soul essence. As such, the amount of soul essence required was huge. Zhang Kong had no idea if the military was willing to let Mo Fan take all he needed, since there was no way to tell just how much he needed to overcome the situation. However, Zhang Kong wanted to save Mo Fan's life at all costs. Control yourself. I'll bring you to the military now, Zhang Kong said. Roar! Mo Fan uttered a savage roar into the sky as if he had totally lost his last remaining shred of reason. Suddenly, he leapt to his feet and sprang into the distance like an arrow, rapidly disappearing from Zhang Kong's sight. Zhang Kong was taken by surprise. He tried to activate his wind wings to chase after Mo Fan, but the airflow quickly dissipated just as it appeared. Zhang Kong realized that he was quite injured himself too, and there was no way he could use the wind wings, which required a significant amount of energy. Mo Fan! Zon Kong screamed at the ghostly figure sprinting across Jinlin City. The figure did not stop. He ran wildly in a certain direction and soon left the boundary of Jinlin City. The problem was, if he continued to run aimlessly in the wild, his soul would end up being sucked dry. Zon Kong stared at the disappearing figure with an indescribable pain in his heart. As a matter of fact, since the calamity of Bo City, Zon Kong had always kept an eye on Mo Fan. He had even asked Dean Xiao to specifically look after him. Zon Kong knew it was only a matter of time until Mo Fan's double innate elements were made known to the public. After learning about the shocking experiment on the demon element that the military was performing behind the scenes, he had been keeping an eye on Lu Nian for quite some time. As he expected, he did make his move. However, Zon Kong had underestimated the devil's madness. He had surprisingly asked his loyal subordinates to forfeit their positions in order to carry out his demented operation. More than half of the students were killed. Even Mo Fan had disappeared due to the after effects, with no way of telling if he would survive in the end. Zon Kong was so mad that he kept punching the ground with his fists. Why didn't he act earlier to prevent this from happening? It was no longer possible to chase after Mo Fan. Zon Kong had run out of the energy to do so. He had just flown all the way here without stopping, using up quite a huge chunk of his wind energy. Even with the wind wings, it would be rather difficult for him to catch up with the demonized Mo Fan's ridiculous speed in the wild. Rising to his feet, Zon Kong headed back to the center of the city. He soon found the 4 students and the rest of Lu Nian's subordinates. If you were planning to resist, I don't mind executing you on the spot. Zon Kong cast a cold glance at Zhang Yi and her crew. Zhang Yi shook her head in surrender. We won't be doing that, but could you please tell us what happened to the commander? He's dead, torn apart by the demon you all made, Zon Kong replied. Zhang Yi and the soldiers were stunned. They were unwilling to believe it before seeing the corpse in person. They did manage to find the corpse, whose chest was punched clean through and blackened. His face was greatly contorted, as if he had suffered incredible pain right up until the very last moment of his life. According to Zon Kong, Mo Fan had torn his soul apart. Zhang Yi and the soldiers burst out crying. On the other hand, Zhao Manting, Bai Tingting, and Mu Nujiao were pleased, knowing that they were avenged. Their hatred toward the devil who had killed their friends so inhumanely despite calling himself a battle mage was indescribable. What wrong had the students who were here for training done? Why did they have to suffer just because of his wild ambition? Where's Mo Fan? Is he hurt? I'll treat his wounds. Bai Tingting blurted out. We'll talk about it later. Zon Kong was unwilling to talk about it. Please tell us. Mu Nujiao said firmly. I'll notify his family, Zon Kong said in a soft tone. He was glaring at Zhang Yi and her crew with bloodshot eyes. Zon Kong was furious. He was angry at these cold-blooded killers who were as mad as Lu Nian. They had turned a rising talent, who could possibly be the greatest magician of all time, into a demon. Just like what he had said before. Even without the demon element, his double innate elements could easily have let the whole world know his name. It was totally unnecessary. No one had higher hopes for Mo Fan than him. Lu Nian's corpse was brought back to the safe zone. The students who had initially gone to investigate Jinlin City for their training had returned to Imperial College with the lowest survival rate in history. No one had expected this to happen. The military had sent someone over to collect Lu Nian's corpse and Zhang Yi, who was willing to testify at the court-martial. The army headquarters which Lu Nian belonged to tried to keep the news down to avoid unnecessary consequences, but the schools demanded otherwise. At Zon Kong's request, the information about the demon element was not made public by the military and the schools. They were only describing it as some evil experiment. No one knew that Mo Fan had been demonized too. The only people who were aware of it were Zon Kong, Dean Song He, Dean Xiao, Chu Yuha, and the 4 friends whom Mo Fan had rescued. Zhang Yi and the soldiers who knew the truth were all sentenced to death. Out of Zhang Yi's final hint of kindness, she told everyone that Mo Fan was a hero who had sacrificed himself to save his classmates, instead of a demonized human who was lost somewhere in the wild. The familiar chirps of birds were heard. It seemed like the little creatures living on the trees in the garden had grown up. Their voices sounded more mature. Opening her eyes, the first thing that came into her vision was the potted plant by the window, which provided a delicate fragrance throughout the night. It appeared that some maids had remembered to keep it watered while she was away, allowing it to grow healthily. The room was filled with a familiar scent, the scent of the blanket from the perfume satchel placed beside the pillows. She's awake. Young mistress is awake. As soon as Mu Ningzhu regained consciousness, she could hear the maid screaming at the top of her lungs. It was followed by the sound of someone rushing down the stairs. Mu Zhouyan, who looked slightly haggard, dashed into the room excitedly. She's awake, my good daughter, you're finally awake. Mu Zhouyan said in a deeply concerned manner. Father. Mu Ningzhu's lips curled slightly. I'll never let you go on a training mission again, never. Mu Zhouyan snapped. Mu Ningzhu slowly recalled the events before she passed out. She could remember the evil faces of the battle mages, and her freezing them using all her energy. Did she manage to escape? But it wouldn't be that simple. While she was half awake, she heard people crying beside her, someone trying to tell her something, and it seemed to be related to Mo Fan. Chapter 328 Forcing into Marriage. Mu Zhouyan knew his daughter was unaware of the things that had taken place after she fell unconscious. He immediately told her what he knew. Sigh, who would have thought that the kid would sacrifice himself as bait to lure the razor-tail drake out, Mu Zhouyan said with a hint of sadness. In the end, the razor-tail drake and Lu Nian ended up killing one another, while you guys were saved. Mo Jiaxin did come to visit you a few days ago. I've comforted him, and offered him a job with high pay. Unfortunately, he declined the offer. Mu Zhouyan was never too fond of the little jerk Mo Fan, but who knew he would sacrifice himself for his daughter. It totally revised his point of view on him. He had asked his people to take extra care of his family as a way to express his gratitude. Is he really dead? Mu Ningzhu asked sternly. Zhang Kong has said it himself. I don't think he would be lying. Don't get too emotional about it. To be honest, I didn't know he liked you so much, to be willing to sacrifice his life for you. If I knew, I won't have treated him like that before. Ah, forget it, Mu Zhouyan uttered with a sigh. Mu Ningzhu hugged her knees while staring blankly out of the window. She subconsciously recalled the words that Mo Fan had said to her at the church. Did he really mean what he had said? Either way, she had no way to verify it. It had somehow become his last words to her. The last remaining anticipation inside her heart thoroughly dissipated. Ningzhu, you shouldn't use the ice crystal bow again for the next year, Mu Zhouyan said with a stern face. Even though I'm eager to see you establish yourself in the massive Mu clan, I'm more inclined to see you well and healthy. Our little Mu family is already in such bad shape that we have to live under the clan's roof here in the capital. If you fall, it will be the end for our family. I'll be more careful, Mu Ningzhu nodded. She was still occupied with past memories that made her feel slightly embarrassed. Mu Zhouyan stopped disturbing her rest. He understood that his daughter's mind was still occupied with the boy who had brought her away from a giant cage. Leaving the room, Mu Zhouyan sank into the sofa and let out a deep breath. As he was just about to start planning his next step, the butler led a young man with a silver necklace and a middle-aged man whose hair was combed back from his forehead from the entrance. Both of them were appropriately dressed, with a fair amount of accessories, including jades, pendants, and rings. It was hard to tell if they were mere decorations or valuable magic equipment. Why hello, Mr. Zhou and Yu Hong. Xiaoling, please bring me my best tea leaves. Mu Zhouyan rose to his feet and greeted them warmly. Don't worry about the tea. We're just here to visit Mu Ningzhu regarding her injury, the middle-aged man with the surname Zhou said. She's currently resting. Please, take a seat. I do want to discuss with Mr. Zhou our business of acquiring rare bones from all sources in the market. I'm well prepared to present the proposal. Should we invite the presidents of the various auctions for a team meeting sometime soon? Mu Zhouyan asked with a smile. Shouldn't you be asking the people from your clan? Most of the auctions and trading markets are tagged with the surname Mu. I don't see any reason to ask me about that, Mr. Zhou raised his brows and said, pretending to be clueless about what he had heard. Dad, you can't say that. You know that Uncle Zhouyan here is in quite a tough position. We should help him as much as we can. I don't see any need to do that. First, we aren't related at all. Our Zhou family might be quite powerful in the capital, but we do follow the rules among the renowned families, Mr. Zhou said. Mu Zhouyan wore an awkward face, not knowing how to respond. Mu Zhouyan disliked the feeling of asking for people's favor, but he was left with no choice. He had a giant family to look after. Most of the family members were completely useless and only knew how to waste money. He had already told them many times that their status was not as comfortable as it used to be in Bo City, but his advice was totally in vain. Zhou Yuhong ran out of patience, seeing Mu Zhouyan hesitating as usual. Uncle Zhouyan, you know that I'm sincere toward Mu Ningzhu. I believe we should proceed with our wedding as soon as possible, then we will have a reason to help you all we can. We do feel pity for your family after what had happened to Bo City, and we are aware that you're currently living under the clan's roof. They are pretty much treating you all as outsiders. However, it would be completely different after the wedding. You will be directly related to our Zhou family, and the Mu clan will be friendlier to you as a way to express their respect toward us. I was going to give Mu Ningzhu some expensive herbs for her recovery, but our patriarch has made it clear that it's not allowed since Mu Ningzhu is still not one of the Zhou family. In addition to that, without our Zhou family's support, the advantage that Mu Ningzhu has due to her talents will soon be irrelevant against the rest of the geniuses in the Imperial College. Zhou Yuhong had no intention to drag things on further. Since she was already engaged to him, he preferred to get it done as soon as possible. Mu Ningzhu's outstanding physique, smooth skin, and glamorous face. Zhou Yuhong had long coveted her. Knowing that he would obtain her once the marriage was done, he tried even harder to persuade Mu Zhouyan. Well, about this, Mu Zhouyan was unable to make up his mind. He clearly knew that with the marriage, his family that was on the verge of going bankrupt would finally have hopes of recovering. But, when he remembered that Mo Fan had just saved Mu Ningzhu's life, if he were to agree to the wedding now, he would feel guilty toward the deceased kid. Why don't we decide this sometime later? Mu Ningzhu is still incredibly weak. I don't want her to be bothered by it. Mu Zhouyan said, exactly, we should just proceed with the wedding to cleanse her from her recent bad luck. Mr. Zhou blurted out impatiently. It's fine, her well-being is more important. If that's the case, we shall let Mu Ningzhu rest well. We will come to visit her again. Zhou Yuhong knew that there was no need to push any further. It would not look good if he were forcing an injured woman who was still lying in bed to marry him. It was just a matter of time until he claimed the beauty as his. Please excuse us. As for the auctions, you will need to come up with a plan yourself. Mr. Zhou said bluntly. Zhou Yuhong still showed his politeness as a future son-in-law by saying goodbye before taking his leave. Mu Zhouyan let out a deep sigh, watching the figures of the father and son of the Zhou family leaving. Family, clan, and house were three completely different levels. The Mu family Mu Zhouyan was in charge of was only a small emperor controlling Bo City. In the eyes of the real Mu clan, they were like insignificant family members who had been exiled to a small city in the south. Now that Bo City was gone, Mu Zhouyan was forced to bring his half-broken Mu family back to the capital. However, apart from Mu Ningzhu, who could still earn the respect of the ancient ice element Mu house due to her outstanding talent among those in her age group, Mu Zhouyan and Mu He were like higher servants obliged to listen to the orders of other family members who had more resources than them. They were considered fairly old, and their cultivation would no longer be able to improve any further. As a result, they had no chance of expanding their power and circle of influence. They could only place their hopes in the younger generation. Otherwise, they would never be able to raise their heads as long as they were surnamed Mu,